Well, good evening, everyone. And it's such a blessing to see all of you out here tonight. Those who have made it on the line tonight. We're missing a few people here tonight, but hopefully as we're talking, I just saw someone pop on as we're getting started here. I want to welcome those of you who may be listening to us online at Spreaker.com. We thank God for you. And before we get started, just want to make a couple announcements. I was hoping more people would be on, and we'll continue to pass the word. As many of you know who've been a part of this ministry for the several years that we've been doing it every summer, we kind of take a small little break. It gives me an opportunity to recharge. It gives me an opportunity to spend time with my family. My daughter and my wife and are getting more involved in the new church that we're at, and we're actually going down to the Jersey Shore June 2nd. We're doing a week of church at the beach. Just doing a lot of stuff, but excuse me, with all the other things that have been going on in my life. For those of you who just popped on, my mom with the cancer, my daughter with her hospitalization and things that were going on with her, my cousin's husband who's in a coma right now because of the brain injury he had. There's just so much on my plate. And listen, again, I'm not complaining. I'm thankful that God has given me the strength to go through. So usually in the middle, towards the end of June, we break for the summer months. We come back in September again to give me a time to prepare for the next year and the upcoming new season and just kind of recharge my battery and spend more time with my family, because I do sacrifice a lot of time with them. But so I just want to give you some dates. This year we're going to be breaking a little early. We're going to be going to June 7th. June 7th will be our last day before we break for the summer. Usually I go a week or two later, but I was debating this and just asking God. And just, I would be unfair to myself, unfair to my family, and unfair to every one of you. As much as I'm being pulled in so many directions to say, keep on trying to squeeze things in here, eventually things suffer. And the last thing I ever want to do is give less than what's required of this ministry or anything else that I do. I try to do everything I can to the best of my ability, and I don't want to cheat anyone. So just please keep that date on your calendar. June 7th will be our last meeting, and we'll break for the summer as we usually do. And as those of you know, even though we're away from the summer, I'm always available, whether it's call me on the phone or contact me via email or text for any issue. I'm always readily available. I'll take your call you back, or whatever it is. So that doesn't mean that, I disappear. So just want to make that very clear as well. And if you don't have my number, please ask. I will give it, and I'll make sure as we get closer to that date, I'll share it again. I tell everybody you can freely call me any time of the day, any time of the night. I may not answer right away, but one thing you can be assured is I will get back to you, as I always do. Well, nonetheless, let's get started. As a couple more people have popped on the line. Good to see you all. As we continue our study from the book of Proverbs that we started a couple of weeks ago, and we were kind of interrupted with all the things that were going on in my life, I want to start tonight by asking a simple question. When you prepare to set out on a trip, as many of us do you simply just load up the car? Do you just start, driving aimlessly? Do you go to the airport and simply buy a ticket on the next available flight, no matter where it's going? Well, I'm sure that for all of you, the answer is hopefully no, because there's no telling where you might end up, and it could be someplace that you really don't want to be. Your destination is your goal. And if you're feeling hungry for some really great barbecue, I've been told, which I'm going down there on Thursday, you'd want to go to Kansas City. And if you want to enjoy the view from one of the greatest buildings that we have here in New York City, right, the Empire State Building, you'd have to come to the Big Apple, New York City. And I submit to each of you tonight that success in life, spiritual and otherwise, is every bit as much a destination as is a physical place. Now, if you want to reach that destination, you need to know what the destination is, and then you need to have a plan for how to get there. And that is what we mean when we talk about setting and achieving goals, which is the title of my sermon tonight, which is how to achieve your goals. And in our study that we have been looking into what the book of Proverbs has to say about different areas of our life and how using those proverbs we can change our lives for the better. And in one area that most of us, I know I do, need help is in learning how to achieve our goals. And while the word goals is never specifically used in the book of Proverbs, the concept of it, of that word is most definitely is. And we're going to see that tonight. And I'll start off by simply asking you this. Why should we set goals at all? And you know what? I have actually spoken to people who are opposed to the concept of goals. And sadly, especially those who term themselves as religious people, who seem to think that it is somehow unspiritual. Yet the book of Proverbs gives us some very good reasons for doing just that. In the book of Proverbs, the 3rd chapter, verses 21 to 23, and I'm reading from the New Living Translation, it says this: "My child, don't lose sight of good planning and insight. Hang on to them, for they fill you with life and bring you honor and respect. They keep you safe on your way and keep your feet from stumbling." So it is quite obvious that God wants us to make plans for the future and wants us to follow those plans until our goals are achieved or reached. And if you are a spiritual person, which I believe all of you are, I think it is even more important to set and achieve goals than if you were not. And let me give you some reasons, right? And what I want to share with you tonight. The first reason, it's a matter of stewardship. Proverbs 6 verses 6 to 8 says, "Go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider its ways and be wise. It has no commander, no overseer or ruler, yet it stores its provisions in summer and gathers its food at harvest." Now, it's quite amazing that the writer of Proverbs uses the little ant to show us the importance of planning or setting goals. The ant is not a huge animal by any means. Instead, is one of the smallest insects known to us. Yet with such a little brain, it is able to do what many of us do not. It stores up its supplies for a later time when it needs it. And how many of us, when we have extra finances or extra of anything, take that same approach? And so, yes, as embarrassing or belittling as it may seem based on what the writer wrote, we need to take that cue from the ant to plan, to make goals, set goals, to make plans for future needs. The next thing why we should set goals, because it's a matter of prosperity. Proverbs 21:5 says this: "The plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty." Again, this is something that we can all relate to. Most of us, I'm sure, have worked or are now retired, and during our time of employment, hopefully we all planned, or for those who are still working, are still planning for that period in our life when retirement becomes a reality. And if we were or are now diligent in that planning or setting of goals, then we see the profit of it. Not that we become super rich by any means, but we are then able to retire and live out the rest of our lives with relative little worry. Yet we know that far too many people are not diligent in this area or many other areas of their lives that require diligent and wise planning. So now that we see why it is so important to set and eventually achieve goals in our lives, now the question that needs to be answered is this: what kind of goals should we set? Well, for me, and I hope for each of you it's the same, the most important thing with regards to any goals that we set is that they first must be goals that honor God. Proverbs 16:3 says, "Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and He will establish your plans." Now, my brothers and sisters, there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that when we set and plan for goals that honor God, He will help to establish them. Why? Because they are plans that are not selfish in nature, but they are for God's glory. When a man or a woman sets out a plan to get rich simply because they want to amass things like big cars, big homes, a flashy lifestyle, where is God honored in all of this? Now, understand what I'm saying. I'm not saying that setting a goal to be successful and rich is in itself wrong. Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, the world around us says it's a great thing. It's the right thing to do. But remember, we are talking from a Christian perspective here. Do you really think God is going to establish those plans if they don't honor and glorify him? Now show me a man or a woman whose desire is to help others, to feed them, to clothe them, to give them room and board, and etc. A perfect example for us and that I added to my sermon today was the billionaire Robert Smith. Now until today, I knew nothing about this man. I had never heard his name. As a matter of fact, many have dubbed him, according to what I heard today, they've dubbed him the silent billionaire. Because he's not one of these flashy, throw my wealth in your face kind of guy. While he was giving the commencement speech for Morehouse College, he surprised everyone in the graduating class of over 400 by stating that his family was going to make a donation to pay off all their student loans. Now, I don't know about you, I would have lost my mind right there. Not only for the students, but being a parent of a student who has all these loans. And what he did, he implored his fellow classmates, he implored them to pay it forward. Meaning, you do that for someone else down the line if you have the opportunity to. And it may not have to be paying off their loans, but maybe God will use you in a different way. And my brothers and sisters, you don't think that doesn't honor God? You don't think that God knew his heart and helped this man to amass the riches that he has because he knew that one day he would use a lot of his fortunes to help others? The gift that he gave was over $40 million. Now, that's not a small amount there, even to a billionaire. I mean, let's ask that question. How many rich people do that? And not to get political, but we have a president in the White House who loves to tout about how rich he is, and it's a known fact that he does very little giving. And you may be saying, well, Pastor, he seems to be doing well. Is God blessing him? Well, let me say this, and I think you've heard this before. The enemy knows how to bless as well for his own evil purposes as well. And it's no coincidence now that we see all this trouble coming down around the president. And I firmly believe that in the end, he will have to answer for all his immorality and all his stuff. But that's a whole different topic. And a couple of questions as we go forward that you can ask yourself to see whether or not your goals are goals that honor God are these. The first question you can ask yourself is this: can I honestly ask God's help in striving to reach this goal that I have set for myself? You see, if you're a truly committed Christian, when you ask yourself that question, I have no doubt you will know the answer right away. The conviction of the Holy Spirit will come. If it's not to honor God, then you know you have no business asking God's help to reach this goal. But if your goal is with God in mind in everything that you do, it's to honor and glorify God. Now, understand what I'm saying. Not saying that every goal has to be to help everyone else, but even in bettering yourself, your life glorifies God because God eventually uses you for other things. The second question is, will I be a better person for accomplishing this goal? You see, if you know your plans will first honor God and then second help others, then there's no doubt that you will be a better person after it. Finally, the types of goals that we should set are what I have labeled as SMART goals. And the word SMART that I'm using is actually an acronym. So the goals that are SMART, S-M-A-R-T, begin with the letter S. And that letter stands for the goals that you make that ought to be specific. Now, specific, right? A general goal would be, I'm going to be financially successful. A specific goal would be, I'm going to learn how to effectively market a product that I developed by maybe taking a course at a college or a specialized school that deals with this product so I can be more effective in it. And to set a specific goal, you must answer what I have dubbed the 6 W's, 6 questions that begin with the letter W. The first question is who? Who is involved in this goal? Along with you, is it other like-minded, God-fearing people who have the same heart to honor and glorify God? The second W is what? What do I want to accomplish? What is the end goal of it all? Why is it that you're setting this goal? What are you trying to get to? What's the end game? The next W is where. We need to identify a location. Where is it that you're trying to have this goal affect people? Is it locally in your community? Is it globally? Where is it? The next W is when. We need to establish a time frame. Any goal that doesn't have some sort of time frame is a goal that eventually becomes problematic. Is it a 5-year goal? A 10-year goal? It's no different when we set goals to lose weight, right? Usually a person will say, I'm going to lose X amount of pounds in the next 6, the next 10, the next 12 months. We set goals, parameters, guidelines, if you will. The next W is the word which, to identify requirements and constraints. When you set a realistic goal, you have to be able to identify what are the constraints or stumbling blocks that you may encounter and will have to possibly deal with. Because listen, in any goals that we set, there are always obstacles, physical obstacles, obstacles from people that the enemy uses, spiritual obstacles. At the same time, you have to also identify what the specific requirements of these goals are. Whether it's financial, whether it's involving more of your time and resources. What will be needed to achieve these goals? And the final W is the why. Again, specific reasons, purposes, or benefits for accomplishing this goal. Why are you even sacrificing your time? Why are you willing to spend your money? What is the purpose? The next thing, our goals have to be measurable. Now, we kind of touched on this in the beginning, but we need to make sure that we have goals that allow us to determine whether we are making progress. You should be able to ask questions of your goal like, how much, how many, how will I know when it's going to be accomplished? And the answers should be already available. This should have been already thought out. A good thing to remember is this: if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. That's the reality of it. Next, our goals need to be attainable. When you identify goals that are important to you, that you believe God has given to you, you need to begin to figure out ways in which you can make them come true. You need to develop the attitudes, the abilities, the skills, and when necessary, here's the big one, the financial capacity to reach them, because often goals require money. For many, you begin looking at previously overlooked opportunities that others had to bring yourself closer to achieving your goals. And listen, here's the reality. We can attain most any goal that we set out when we plan our steps wisely and establish a time frame that allows us to carry out these steps. Goals that may have seemed far away and out of reach eventually move closer and become attainable. And it's not because your goals shrink, but because you grow and expand to match them. When you list your goals, you begin to develop the traits and personality that allows you to possess them. Next, here's a big one. Your goals need to be realistic. This is one of the biggest stumbling blocks for many today, whether in the Christian world, in the world around us. We need to be realistic when we're making goals. A goal you set must represent an objective toward which you are both willing and able to work towards. Let me say that again. They must represent an objective toward which you are both willing and able to work towards. Understanding that a goal can both be high and realistic at the same time. But you are the only one who can decide just how high your goal should be, because it is you that's reaching after it. But you must be sure that every goal represents substantial progress in your life. And believe it or not, a high, a lofty goal is frequently easier to reach than a low one, because a low goal causes you to exert what I've said many times, that low motivation. right? When it's a low goal, I can get it tomorrow. I can do it. But when your goals are set a little higher, even though some people say don't shoot too high, but you kind of get up for the task. You get that momentum to move toward it. Some of the hardest jobs most of you have ever accomplished probably actually seemed easy in 2020 hindsight simply because they were a labor of love for you. Some of you have accomplished things like Valerie, who's on the line tonight. I'm sure the thing that she's doing with the home that she has for the women, right? It's a labor of love. That's why you're able to accomplish them. And your goal is probably realistic if you truly believe that it can be accomplished. But let me give you a blunt and honest example of a non-realistic goal. And it's a simple one. Now, say, for example, you say that your goal starting tomorrow is to read through the Bible every single day of your life. My brothers and sisters, the probability is high that you're not being realistic at all. Why? Not because you don't really want to. Listen, we all want to do that. Even me as a pastor, I'd love to say, I'm going to read the Bible every day for the rest of my life. I believe most of us would want to manage or make a goal like that. But we know that life today is so hectic. And many of us have our plate so full that sometimes we know for the most part we wouldn't be able to achieve that goal. There are times I get pulled in so many different directions that my Bible reading time gets thrown to the wayside because I'm getting pulled here, or my daughter's in the hospital here, or I got to run to my mother here. It's not saying that I'm a bad Christian, but life dictates life dictates reality sometimes. And when you set unrealistic goals, you're just setting yourself up for a letdown. Finally, my brothers and sisters, your goals need to be timely. Set a time frame for the goal. Whether it's for next week, 3 months, 3 years, whatever your goal is, it needs to have a beginning and an ending point. Putting an end point on your goal gives you a clear target to work towards. If you don't set a time frame, the commitment is going to be vague. It tends not to happen because you feel you can start at any time when you don't set a start and an end point. I get to it tomorrow. I get to it next week, next year. You never get to it because you never set any time points. Without a time limit, there's no urgency to start taking action now. And finally, as we come to a close tonight, when you set goals that honor God, they often need to be, and they will be, goals that you are willing to pay the price for. Philippians 3 verses 10 to 11 says, I want to know Christ. Yes, to know the power of his resurrection and participation in his sufferings, becoming like him in his death, and so somehow attaining to the resurrection from the dead. My brothers and sisters, when the Apostle Paul wrote this, he wasn't some lunatic, crazy guy who didn't know what he was asking for. Paul knew what Christ had endured. He understood the suffering he went through. He understood the crucifixion at the cross. And yet, that was the goal that he set for himself, to be more like Christ, to participate in his sufferings, even in his death. Think about that for a moment. Christ endured the most horrific of deaths known to man at that time, and he suffered immensely. Yet Paul was willing to set a goal wherein he knew that he too could suffer much, and we know that he did, to the glory of his risen Savior. And the question I ask is this: are you willing to pay the price for your goal? The long hours, the lack of sleep, the hours of laboring, the financial costs, the lost time with family and friends. I can go on and on. My brothers and sisters, as we come to a close tonight, if the Church of Jesus Christ is ever to get back to that place of being a true and powerful lighthouse in the midst of this dying and dark world, then we have to start with Christians such as ourselves who are willing to set goals in our lives that will make a difference. Goals to be better servants, goals to be better husbands, goals to be better wives, deacons, elders, pastors, and the list goes on and on and on. My question I leave with you tonight as we close: what goal will you begin to set for yourself that will honor God as we come to a close tonight in prayer?